This is Toledo Symphony Lab, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of classical music from WGTE Public Media and your Toledo Symphony. I'm Brad Cresswell. Joining me by phone today are the Toledo Symphony's music director, Elaine Trudell. I also have principal second violin and artistic administrator, Merwin Sue.
It's so good to not see you, Brad.
Yes, indeed.
Hello, Brad.
We're taking social distancing, to the next level here, because not only are you talking to me by phone, I've only got 2 phone lines here into the studio, so only 2 at a time can come on board and talk. So it's a little bit of an experiment. This is the first time that we have operated completely under this stay-at-home situation, but I think everything is going to be okay. Now, Elaine, you're in Canada, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're in your home. Where are you in your home? I know you had to move around a little bit to find a good signal.
Yeah, I went to my office. I have the office is downstairs, so I think I have the best signal here. Hopefully, you can hear me well.
Yeah, well, I can hear you fine. And Merwin, you're not too far away. You're at home, right?
Yes, actually, it's funny because you're so used to, looking for cell phone reception, but my cell phone here, just the reception isn't very good. And so I'm desperately seeking the landline plugins and realizing I have no idea where in my home these are. So I am sitting on top of a chest freezer, leaning against my laundry room setup. Yeah.
Wow.
Because that's where the landline phone is. So it's really funny.
It didn't happen unless we get a picture, so we'll be waiting for that. What I want to talk about today, well, first of all, I want to check in with the two of you because we've been doing social distancing for a while, and we've been talking about different ways that the symphony is operating under quarantine. But of course, the stay-at-home orders are still going strong, and life has changed for everybody, and certainly the arts have changed for everybody. I want to talk a little bit about what you guys have been doing and how you've been coping. Elaine, let's start with you. I mean, what have the days been like for you now? You were quarantined for a while when you went back, and I know that you're free now, right?
Yes. When I came back after our recording of the Brahms Fourth Symphony program, which we played as a live broadcast, as most of the people know. I came back to Montreal, but they announced in Canada the quarantine started on the 12th, and we played on the 13th. And I right after the concert, I got back to Canada on the 13th in the evening, but it was the day after, so I had to take a voluntary 14-day quarantine at home. Having a young kid, you never want to take a chance anyway. Yeah. But of course, you never want anybody. You don't want to be in the middle of something that you might cause, even without knowing it, because a lot of people have it, but they don't have symptoms. So it's important to really obey those 14 days. So 14 days, and then then I'm back. I can we can do it's a little bit like in the States. We can go around, but if you go to the store, we have big lines because everybody has to be 6 foot, 6 feet apart. And it's very, very strict, very, very strict guidelines, which I appreciate a lot because you feel safe. But at the same time, it's not a sprint; it's a marathon.
Yeah.
So it's very important to treat day number 60 like day number 1, and that's the big challenge for people. Some people, it's normal; it's a human nature. It's like it's not that people do a checklist, but a little bit. Okay, I've done this for a week now. But you have to do it for as long as we need to do it, and then it's going to go faster. As musicians, we're especially classical musicians, we're very used to discipline, repeating things every day and following guidelines because, you know that you're not going to sound good for the first 2-3 years. So if you play string instrument, so scratch, and eventually makes a real sound. And for us, it's the same thing in the brass and woodwinds, but so just following the guidelines and working a lot from home to create content for a public. Those we've done 8 television shows now that you very generously broadcast, and I'm working on a few more actually television shows that I've been doing yesterday and today. Also programming. I mean, the idea is that this is now, but we have to think about the future. I mean, as much as we are obeying everything we have to do now, we have to be optimistic about the future and keep planning on the great days that are ahead of us. And that's very important.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad to hear that you are disciplined. I can't say the same for myself, but that's good. Merwin, I know you're at home. You have two little boys at home as well, and I imagine your day-to-day has changed quite a bit.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful to actually be able to kind of bear witness to all of the kind of daily changes that my 2.5-year-old is going through. He gets more and more vocal and more active, and then we're also kind of trying to juggle, the realities of working from home along with online school, and for my 7-year-old, and the school systems have done a great job, and we're feeling like he's making a lot of progress and really appreciating the chance to, connect with his teachers and his classmates again. And, all of that's going, as well as can be expected. And echoing what Alain said, definitely looking ahead to the future and planning, what strikes the right note in terms of when we get back in front of audiences again, which I know that every one of my colleagues and friends just can't wait to do.
Well, you're kind of getting in front of audiences through the internet, through these different social media videos and things like that. There have been a lot of them. What would you say was the first engagement that you made when all of this started coming down? I mean, I know there was the play with Alain. Was that really the first in this initiative?
That was definitely very early.
Yeah.
I think right after the live stream, we then had musicians kind of creating their own individual content. But I think Play with Alain was definitely very early. I think one of the things that kind of certainly not differentiates our orchestra, but it's something that we're very proud of, is when we have a school of music. And so that's something that was so important for us, was to make sure that all of our teachers were able to have the resources necessary. So I think that kind of early on, it might not have been as visible, but you were definitely looking to make sure that virtual music lessons and virtual classes were being able to be taken place. And I know you've talked about that with Rachel already on the radio show, so we won't talk too much more about it. But that was maybe the very first thing, and pretty steadily since then we've been unveiling kind of music from the TSO musicians, and I know that Alain's been part of several of those projects.
Well, I want to listen to some of these entries here, and we should mention that all of this stuff is on the Toledo Symphony's YouTube channel, and we'll link to that on our website. Make sure people can go watch these videos. But for folks who haven't seen them yet, I want to play a little bit of music. The first piece I want to play here comes from the Toledo Symphony Brass. This is sort of one of those Zoom-like videos where you've got everybody showing up in a different square and all of their instruments playing together. Alain, you want to talk a little bit, because you're included here, you want to talk a little bit about what this particular video is?
Yes. Well, I'm a conductor, but I'm also a musician. So
Now, you could have said you could have said you're also a trombonist, but you chose the word musician. So that's, usually we say there are singers and musicians, but I don't know about conductors and musicians. So, yeah.
Okay, no, but seriously, my colleagues were nice enough to let me in on it. David Zaltzman, our fabulous tuba player, and our great principal trombone, Garth Simmons, they put together this kind of this opportunity for us to play together. It really came from David at the beginning. Say, hey, you guys want to do something? And most of the people, I think maybe all of it, I've done some of that before, but I think most of the colleagues, it was the first time that they did it. And it was quite exciting for all of us, because we got to play brass ensemble together. And we're trying to find a way to create something that was, it's easy enough to take a video of yourself playing, but it doesn't really involve a community. It doesn't really talk about sharing all that much. I mean, it's great. I mean, and it creates content for people to have a bit of a moment to be in communion with the arts, and that's fantastic. But it's nice also to show what we can do as a community. And that's why, the videos that I've done, the play along with Alain, they're duets. They're videos that kids or big kids can play along with me, because we have the music also for all instruments that you can think of, the band or orchestra. They go on the website of the orchestra and they download their parts, and we can play duets together. They need practice a little bit. They're not all easy, but it's a lot of fun. So when David talked about doing something together, I thought, of course, this is a fantastic idea. And all the colleagues were like, I'm in, let's do this. So we're looking for what to play together. Of course, Gabriele comes to mind because it's one of the greatest composers that wrote for brass. So we put this together. So the way we did is we had the Lorraine, our principal trumpet, play her leading part. And then we had David, so we have the two parts. By the way, for people who are attempting to do that kind of recording, it's always a good idea to have the top part first more than the bottom part, because we all, this is a little bit more technical, but when I do them myself, also I'm doing one now that I'll post soon. That's a quartet, again, from the Renaissance era. But, you kind of go with the melody. And all those musicians play greatly in tune, so that's not a problem. So it's good to follow the tune, not just to play in a vertical way, but in horizontal, which you play a shape, a line, a phrase, instead of landing chords together. It's more musical. So if some people are trying some of that stuff at home, because now it's very easy to do. It's not easy to do. It's easy to have access. But it's really not easy to do.
Yeah, it's not easy to do. And I mean, even going back to the play with Alain, I looked at the music because I thought, hey, I'll grab a kazoo, I'll grab something and play along. And I looked at the music and I said, no way, that's not going to happen.
I know. I've had there's some slow ones that are okay, but I'm going to do more that are more, how could I say, accessible to everybody. I was just, I like to challenge myself too. So maybe there were one or two of them are maybe a little difficult, but we'll come back with some nice ones. And you have seen some musicians are playing some Suzuki things also, but I'm sure when we'll talk to you about that. Yeah. So anyway, so we put this together. Garth and I overdubbed the trombone, so we do two trombones each. Garth is the trombone player of the first group. I'm the trombone player of the second group, because it's music that's written for two antiphonal brass music that's written for two brass groups. So we answer each other, question answer. And Laurent leads us in this, and it's some beautiful Gabriele music, and it's big thank you to David and Garth of putting this together, because basically most of us are dinosaurs, and those guys, they know what they're doing, so we're very happy to have them with us.
Well, let's play a little bit of it and listen to the end result here. Now you can hear the antiphonal parts, right, where the two choirs play back and forth.
Exactly.
It's really quite amazing, because it sounds like a lot of instruments, and you guys have to coordinate so you're playing on the beat, right? I imagine that's a little bit of a challenge.
Well, we put a click track, right? So and the challenge for classical musicians is a click track is pretty much the contrary of how you would feel when you're playing classical music, because like, for example, if you're playing pop music, there's like a drum that's very, very steady. In classical music, it's more organic a little bit. It moves around ever so slightly, which creates this beautiful phrasing. So for us, it's to play around with that click track so that we all finish on the beat together or start on the beat together. So it's more challenging for us a little bit than people from the pop music world. And it's great. We learn a lot from doing that. It's really nice. And also it creates some very good content. And, some people wish, I would like to hear the brass of the orchestra play something. Well, then you can go and hear there's 9 of us. There's 9 parts.
Yeah. But it's a song in 12 tones, right, by Gabriele?
No, it's a song in the 12th tone.
The 12th tone. Okay. Well, there's my Latin right there. In the 12th tone.
Yeah.
What's the difference between 12 tones and the 12th tone? Does that mean there are 12?
The 12th tone would be 12 of different tones, but the 12 tones, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like it goes with the mode of what you're playing, because we're not 12 people playing. It's written for 8, 9 with the tuba, and it's each of the canzoni or the sonata that he wrote, especially the canzoni, which are just songs, as you said. They're in a different tonality, and instead of saying A major, a C major, D major, they said in which number of the scale they are.
Yeah, well, that's good. We've all had a little music lesson here and a Latin lesson while we're at it.
Well, one of the things that's I'm not sure how intended this was, but I think it's actually very poignant. Is like with Gabriele. This wasn't necessarily intended to be performed all on the same stage, all pointing in the same direction.
Right.
The fact, like if you're listening to Gabriele kind of authentically, you have a sense of distance. There's a sense of distance that's kind of built in because he envisioned, choirs at separate areas of the cathedral, and to have that be music in an area where you're when you're forced to distance, I think Gabriele is really the perfect choice.
Yeah, you make a great point.
No, and just in St. Mark of Venice, which this music was written for, you're so far from each other. And I conducted and played a lot of this music in Italy, and we do them, for example, when we played in Florence, we played a group on a boat on the water, a group on the Ponte Vecchio, the people who go as tourists. That's where you buy, golden things on the old bridge, Ponte Vecchio, and people on the lawn next to it at the boat club. And we play. We're not 6 feet from each other. We're about 100, and between the players. So it's social distancing before it's time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it certainly is music that I think can lift people's spirits a little bit to go online and to see that and to know that the musicians of the symphony are still, making music, keeping that music alive. So that's a great way to interact with the public. Elaine, I want to thank you for chiming in. I'm going to stay with Merwin because we've got another piece that he played that I want to hear. But we'll have you in future episodes, obviously. Best of luck to stay healthy and stay safe up there in Canada. Stay diligent and disciplined, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm working hard to create things for our public and for our fans and for just people maybe who don't have access to music normally. I mean, it's an opportunity for them to discover from WGT on the radio or on television. So thank you very much to you to be there for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, it's time to welcome my next two guests who have joined me today. That is cellist Kellen Degnan, who is from the Toledo Symphony, and also composer and bassoonist, among other things, Maddie Wildman. Welcome to both of you.
Hi there. Hello.
Now, let me just check in with where you guys are right now, because obviously you're calling in from remote locations. Kellen, where are you holed up right now?
So I live in Cleveland. I've been commuting from Cleveland to Toledo for symphony performances since I joined the orchestra. So since the pandemic began, I have been at home in Cleveland. I also teach lessons at a college in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I have been able to start teaching all of those lessons from home. So the main difference in my life is now that I am not driving nearly as much as I used to.
Yeah, saving a lot of gas money, I imagine, but that's offset, of course, by the lack of other things going on. Maddie, give us a little background on you. This is your first time here. Kellen has talked with us before. on the podcast, but you're sort of a newbie here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Maddie. I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I'm a bassoonist and a composer. I am shackled up in my home here in Ann Arbor, and I also work for a music presenting organization here in Ann Arbor called the University Musical Society. I work in arts education.
Yeah.
So, as you can imagine, working for a presenter just like the Toledo Symphony or anyone else, there's a lot. Our line of work has kind of been halted for a while, as well as my line of work as a performer. So I get to work from home. I do a lot of emailing and planning, also cooking, making music, trying to take it slow.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I've
that's
seen
the story
some.
for many.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of musicians have been sharing their videos online. We're going to hear a piece that you wrote, which actually Kellen, I guess, recorded back in, was it in January when you recorded this?
I performed it on a faculty recital at Mercyhurst University, which there is a recording of it that exists, but it is stuck on a hard drive on campus, which is currently locked down.
Ah, wow.
So the recording that you have is actually one that I did at home for the TSO at home performances.
Right, and folks can see that video. We'll link to all of these videos on the website. That's at wgte.org/lab. But let's talk about the piece itself. The whole piece is called Tinted Postcards. We're just going to hear the first movement, which is Ponderosas at Polly Judd. Maddie, why don't you tell us first about the piece as a whole, and then we'll focus on that first movement.
Sure. So the piece as it currently stands is in 3 movements. I've toyed around with the idea of adding more movements. We'll see if that happens or not. But it's for solo cello, and each movement is dedicated to a public park that's played an important role in my life. Each movement comes from a different place that I've lived throughout my life, which also couples with like a very different phase of my life. So Ponderosas at Polly Judd is in reference to the Polly Judd Park in Spokane, Washington, which is kind of my hometown. I spent half of my childhood there, and one of the biggest things I miss about the western half of the country, and Spokane especially, is the massive pine trees. So that's kind of the image of those ponderosa pines just soaring above and really being very humbling. That's the idea there. And then the other 2 movements, there's one dedicated to the Arboretum here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and the other one is dedicated to a state park called Edness Kimball Wilkins in Casper, Wyoming.
Well, as we know, the cello is an extremely expressive instrument, and I'm just wondering, you as a bassoonist, you're familiar with the bass clef, but does that play at all into your writing for another sort of a cousin, as it were?
Kind of. I don't know. The cello is definitely one of my all-time favorite instruments, and it is always such a joy to write for the cello. I've definitely considered myself, kind of a sibling to the cello in many ways. We both even read tenor clef, which is a rare bird. I first started working with Kellen as a composer through this quartet that Kellen is in called Hole in the Floor, which is for 4 cellos, where I had the great opportunity to write a piece for 4 cellos, which I'm super proud of. And through that collaboration stemmed this new project for solo cello.
Well, let's listen to this piece. It's the first movement from Tinted Postcards, Ponderosas at Polly Judd. This is cellist Kellen Degnan. You recorded, as you said, at home for this particular recording. Music of Maddie Wildman here on Toledo Symphony Lab. That's cellist Kellen Degnan, who is from the Toledo Symphony Orchestra, recording on YouTube, and that is music of Maddie Wildman. We heard the first movement from a larger work called Tinted Postcards for solo cello, that first movement called Ponderosas at Polly Judd. One of the videos that we're linking to on our website that the Toledo Symphony has offered up during this time of crisis, health crisis going on with the quarantine that is in effect. And I want to thank both of you for spending a little time on the phone with me today. Kellen Degnan, also Maddie Wildman, the composer. Thanks so much for joining us here on Toledo Symphony Lab.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks so much.
So we have a little bonus here for the podcast edition of our program today, and that is Merwin Siu is back with me. He's, of course, principal second violinist with the TSO, fantastic musician who has a real interest not only in the classics, but also in contemporary music and music that has been written in recent years. And we're going to hear one of the videos that you've posted, Merwin. This is for solo violin, and it's from a concerto called Another Spring. I assume you're just playing the violin part,
yes.
Right? Yeah. Tell us about this piece.
Well, this is actually from the pen of one of the music directors of our orchestra in years past, Andrew Massey. And Andrew recently passed away. But when he was the music director when I first joined the orchestra, so really the person who kind of gave me my chance here. And I really owe so much to Andrew and him seeing my potential and what I could give to the organization. And he wrote me this concerto after I performed one of the Four Seasons with him of Vivaldi's. And he invited me to perform this piece with his orchestra in Racine, Wisconsin, and we paired it with the Vivaldi Spring, and so this was literally another spring. And so it's a piece that Andrew wrote very much inspired by a Baroque violin concerto, both in terms of the orchestration and even kind of the relationship between the violin and the other instruments. So it's not the kind of romantic violin concerto where the violin is kind of fighting against the orchestra. Really, the violin is just kind of first among equals, and the orchestral parts are really wonderful and exciting. But this slow movement that I decided to record is one of Andrew's most beautiful melodies. It's just lasts forever. It's this gorgeous melody that unspools and unspools, and you're like, wow, I can't believe this melody can extend over 4, 8, 16 bars, but it's one of Andrew's best.
That's the second movement of the Violin Concerto, Another Spring, music by the late Andrew Massey, former music director of the Toledo Symphony, performed by Merwin Siu, regular panelist here on Symphony Lab, also principal second violin of the Toledo Symphony. That comes from a video that has been posted on the TSO's social media, on their YouTube channel, and other outlets as well. And Merwin has been here with me to introduce the piece for us. Merwin, I want to thank you for chiming in today and kind of sharing some of the ways that the symphony is staying engaged and keeping the music alive.
Absolutely, and I just want to thank everybody in our region who've reached out and supported us and just been so generous to the symphony and to the performing arts as a whole. We're so grateful.
This program is a production of WGTE Public Media in collaboration with our sponsor, the Toledo Symphony, with generous support from the Rita Barber Kern Foundation. You can download episodes of our program as a podcast at our website, wgte.org/lab. You can also subscribe to us through your podcast app of choice, including Apple and Google Podcasts. There are several different ways that you can stay connected to the symphony and keep that music alive during the health crisis. Through the TSO's social media outlets, including on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course YouTube. And if you are local, you can also watch concerts from the past 2 seasons as handpicked by music director Elaine Trudell. That is our television series WGTE Presents TSO in HD. It's broadcast every Sunday at 6 p.m. on WGTE TV 30. You can also hear recent programs of the TSO on Thursday evenings at 8 o'clock p.m. on FM 91 as part of our program WGTE in Concert. I'm Brad Cresswell. You've been listening to Toledo Symphony Lab from FM 91.